for me is Casey Concepcion from Texas A&M. A slot-centric offensive weapon is how I graded him, with emphasis on the yards after catch ability, whether that's inside or out. A quirky, explosive slot weapon with elite foot speed and foot quickness, strong contact balance, and that upside as a yards after catch receiver because of the instincts he brings you with the ball in hand. But he gives you more than that because of his size and the physicality you would expect from that kind of slot explosive receiver that you would, kind of space only receiver that you would expect. Dynamic with the ball in his hand, rare balance, really good change of direction from the slot in terms of it being an offensive weapon, and the focus here is on creativity. Plays bigger than the traditional slot guy, so he does give you some outside versatility, but I think he's best when he's weaponized through schemed touches, motion, spacing, because of that yak ability. So he is creative with the ball in hand, but I do think you're going to have to get creative with kind of the routes that you give him and the system that you put him in terms of being able to scheme him touches up. But yeah, a true yak king, maintains balance through glancing blows, direct contact, rarely goes down on the first hit, just keeps the ball alive, keeps plays alive. Twitchy in his athleticism, explosive motor, rare foot quickness, natural feel in space with his angles, with his routes, and is really comfortable securing the ball when defenders are all over him fighting through traffic. And bigger and sturdier than the typical slot option you would think of when I'm telling you this scouting report. Explosive once he's committed, and yet his alignment flexibility, he will be predominantly a slot, but will give you some outside, so Z usage. Weaknesses for him, because he's really a really strong yak threat, his route tree and his breadth of routes that he's run isn't particularly deep. He's more isolated in the routes that he's run because of the verticality of the way he wins, and his release packages that when he's playing against press corners, he's best when he's given that kind of free release rather than pressed, and his efficiency is going to be tied to how he is used. But I think if you can get him in the right system with a creative play caller who has a strong number one already that you can pair him with, I think you're going to get a really strong, high-volume receiver in Casey Concepcion.
Yeah, I think the thing that stood out for me was over half of his 2025 receiving yards came after the catch. I think that's his main calling card. He's got really good vision, and he likes to make those tacklers miss in those confined areas. So I think over the middle of the field, I think is where he's going to be at his best. In that first kind of 10 to 15 yards of the right sim is where he gets really good separation, and that kind of twitch and burst kind of jumps out at you when you're watching him. I think you mentioned about press corners. I think he's willing to scrap with them, and I think he finishes with a bit more. He doesn't tend to want to dance out of bounds as some wide receivers do. He will finish through contact, so there is a bit of scrappiness there from him. He in that zone coverage, he's got a really natural feel for it, and he opens his hips up to the quarterback quite quickly. So he's really reliable, and if you've got a rhythm thrower as well. Drop rate, he has dropped a lot of passes.
7 drops in 2025.
19 in 186 catches. It is a reasonable percentage. So that's something to just be watched for. And you mentioned about his kind of lack of variety in his route trees, which I think is something that's going to be something he's going to have to work on. But I think if you're a fantasy football fan, you're going to like Casey Concepcion because he's going to get lots of receptions and he's going to get lots of yards after a catch and whatever your format might be. But I think he's more than that. I think that he is a really solid option who I think might sneak in at the back end of round one. I also have him at number 5.
Yeah, I do wonder how chalk is going to be, because I do think that the top of this class in terms of names is fairly obvious. But 5 with Casey Concepcion, and whether that's number 6, 7, 8, they're all going to go fairly early in the second round, if not. So it is quite close between Concepcion at 5 and then the players we'll have at 6, 7, 8, which we'll mention if they're not brought up in the top 5s. So I don't think it's outlandish, but he was number 5 obviously for both of us.